ciao from Elis, Panthera Arvin, and welcome back to a new speed painting, or not actually, because this is not gonna be a speed painting. I'm actually planning to make this video a real-time video. First of all, this is page 107 from Africa, my webcomic, which you can read on DeviantArt, Tapastic, Twitter, and a bunch of different other places. So yeah, actually I wanted to show my real-time process for pretty much forever, basically, ever since I started, but I found that it would be sort of maybe a little bit too boring. So I thought, why not make this a real-time process for just one panel. Specifically, I'm gonna focus on this last panel over here, and I'm gonna answer some of the questions that we didn't get to answer in the last video, the one showing page 106. So I really hope you guys enjoy this, and let me know if if you like this format, because if you do, I might just repeat it, because it's actually pretty much fun to make this sort of videos. And if you guys are interested, I might as well continue. Why not? So the question that I wanted to focus my attention on mostly was one posed by Shadowgate Studio. He or she asked, what's your process for creating your comic pages? So it's pretty much, a straightforward question, but one that actually just requires its own video, I think. Because, it's sort of like a messy process for me. I try to keep consistent with my method, but it just ends up changing every time. Right now, I settled on a method that I'm going to show you, which I'm pretty sure just helps with keeping consistency between pages. So without further ado, let's just get into the whole process here. And before I even do anything, I wanted to show you guys just the stage that the page is at right now. This is the really rough A4 sketch stage, so I really just sketched in the characters right now, with just their basic expressions and positioning and everything. There's nothing too elaborate about it, but this specific sketch comes from a previous step, which is the storyboarding, which I do really often, especially for Africa as a comic. So what I do in general is I grab two copybooks here, which are my go-to resources when creating comics. This in particular is the example I use for Africa. Before I even start working on the actual pages, the one you see here, this one, I try to plan out scenes in advance. I usually just have the whole chapter or the whole story, if possible, entirely planned out before I even start working on the actual pages. This helps me a lot with the just the structure of the whole story. It makes everything seamless together, and it avoids me improvising and just having to fill in gaps that will inevitably be created if I just go with the flow and just create pages as they come to my mind. It's much better to plan things in advance and then have to work from there. So after I plan my entire script out, be it from a scene, a single page, or the whole story, what I do is I try to divide the scene into panels, and I write the script here. This is basically just the speech bubbles, so what they say in each in each bubble. And yeah, so I divide the scene into panels, and I try to give it a coherence, and it helps me a lot to just name the character and write down what they're saying, and trying to make it a little less confusing for me to use later on. This can be also a way to write this, the actual action. I generally don't do this because I have the visual representation of it in my other book, which I'm going to show you right now. But like, you can actually just add hear the movement or the action that that character is doing as it says the lines, and it helps a lot, really. The next, copybook that I use is this one. This is the copybook with the actual storyboards. So with the thumbnails, or, well, it's not, oh yeah, there's a picture of Chewie here. I don't know why. Yeah, so it's basically, this one starts from halfway through the comic because the copybook I had before ran out. Yeah, yeah, so basically it shows a rough version of each page. So this is what may end up looking like the final product, but many of the poses and expressions are subject to change. What I usually try to establish here is the paneling and the position of the characters in the scene. So the way the reading flow works, if everything looks fine, reading wise, if the scene flows naturally, if it looks nice, if it if it can be helped, and and in the very first pages, like these ones, the scenes remain pretty much the same as the final ones. I made very little changes, but later on, as the storyboard progresses, I got it a little more detailed. And so for that reason, I usually sketch the page more than once and try to give it a different vibe, something like that. So for this page in particular here, I have the storyboard right here, and where is it? Okay, it's right here. This is the page we're gonna make. And as you can see, the general idea of the page is pretty much the same as the one you see on this page here. So the action didn't change very much at all. It's just the expressions that I didn't like very much, and I tried to change them a little bit in this page here. So let me just get this whole part of the comic done, and we're gonna meet back when I have just this particular panel still to make, and that's where we're gonna focus our attention on, and that's where I'm gonna answer more of the questions that you guys asked on DeviantArt. And we're back after like 2 seconds, at least for you guys. It took me a while longer than 2 seconds. Probably, let's say 2 nights instead of 2 seconds. But yeah, we're back with Africa page 107, and it's fully colored, fully rendered, fully ready to be scanned in, and the speech bubbles added to the page. I just wanted to show you guys the final product before I actually go ahead and scan it. So I left just the last panel, but the rest of the page is done. As you can see, there's quite a lot of coupling going on in this page, and I really hope you guys enjoy it, because it's so adorable and I freaking loved drawing it. So yeah, let's focus our attention on this very last panel here. Let me focus my camera really quick so that it looks nice and it's ready to record. And let's get right into it. So we're gonna ink and color this page live. I mean live, if you can call this live. In real time, that's what I meant. And in the meantime, instead of having to just listen to empty voices, as I said, we're gonna answer some of the questions I didn't answer with the last video. And I really hope you guys enjoy yourselves. See you later. Alright, here we go. Let's get to work. Let's get on with the inking. And by the way, for inking the page, I'm gonna use both Staedtler pigment liner. Let me get it into the camera. The Staedtler pigment liners and Copic motor liners. They're pretty much equivalent. Some say the Copics are better, some say the Staedtlers are better. They do pretty much the same thing. They're waterproof. Actually, Copics are ink-proof, are alcohol-proof as well, and they're very good for inking and outlining things. or even just as regular pens if you like really fancy felt tip, markers to write. Anyway, let's get on with the very first question that I didn't get to answer in the last video, which was by Classy Snakey. They ask, have you ever run into the issue of putting down something to script, like for a story, that sounds great at first, but then ends up not working? How often has this happened? Alright, so for this, this instance, yeah, it did happen a couple times. It wasn't so frequent, I guess, but it did happen especially with Chakra, which is the older one of my two comics. It happened with Chakra because I wrote Chakra when I was like 15, and I wasn't very experienced. I still am not, but especially in the past, I wasn't very experienced. Most of my ideas just, were kind of lame, I guess. They still are, but they were much worse in the beginning, and so many ended up not working. Many were kind of childish and lame and stuff like that. So and they actually ended up in the comic more often than they do today. I have a much higher, let's say, standard today than I did back in the day. So it does happen, I guess, all the time, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who suffers from it. The best way to avoid, getting bad ideas into an actual script and getting stuck with them in the actual comic is to write everything down. Just write your idea down anyway, because you never know how good it is until you actually test it out. Write it down on like a piece of paper and then walk away for like 1 hour or I don't know, half an hour, however long you like. Walking away from your paper and from your idea gives you a little bit of time to like cool your brain and think about something else, forget about your story for a while. Then when you come back, read it again and give yourself a judgment. Is that idea still as good as you thought when you first wrote it down? It seems stupid because it's just 1 hour, right? But it actually makes a difference. It actually helps you. It helps your brain filter between a good idea and a bad idea. Just that little short time of rest. It allows you to have a better judgment, analyze the idea with a different perspective even. So yeah, make sure you remember to do that. If 1 hour is not enough for you, and if you're still in doubt whether that idea is good or bad, take 2 hours, take 3, take as much time as you need. It doesn't have to be 1 hour for everyone, of course. So next question by Shrimp Productions. They ask, do you ever wonder what your characters will sound like? As in, if your comic is turned into a movie, who would voice your characters? Oh, that's a brilliant one. Okay, yeah, I actually did wonder. What my characters, like what kind of voices my characters will have in real life if they were, alive and able to speak. And yeah, I have like a mental image of the voices of some of my characters, but I've never really like tried to associate them to a voice actor or something like that, because I generally don't watch like English movies, for example, in native English. I usually watch dubs, and dubs suck in Italy. I did imagine some of them. For example, like Cheetah, I imagine him to have this very squeaky, sort of like happy-go-lucky tone all the time. And for his voice, for example, he's the one that I have the clearest idea about. If I could choose an actor like to play him, I would choose probably Greg Sipes, the guy who dubs Beast Boy from Teen Titans, since Beast Boy was my inspiration to create the character of Cheetah. I think it will sound brilliant with Greg Sipes' voice. Then I was told that like Chewie would sound great in Scar's voice, like the actor who plays Scar from The Lion King. I'm not too convinced about that one, but I mean, that would be actually awesome to hear, Chewie in Scar's amazing voice. That would be really amazing. Peaceful Firefly asks, will you ever print any of your comics? And actually, I've already printed some of my comics in the past. I printed Chakra Chapters 1 and 2, but it was just for like a few copies, and it was a private printing. It was not publishing like at an editor. It was more like just for the sheer need to see my comic printed, and I was lucky enough, that I was able to do that, because it's an amazing experience. The copies are sold out, by the way. I'm so sorry. I would love to print the comic again. If there's not enough like interest in the reprints, I will absolutely love to print them again, because it's such a beautiful feeling. It's something that, it's so rewarding. It's undescribable how beautiful it is. And also, I would really like to print Africa. That's one of my Patreon goals. So if I gather enough, I will actually love to print Africa as an actual book this time, not as a private printing. I would love to contact an editor and actually have it published, not just printed. Monster Rife asks, do you always use water paint before you color your art? Or is that just for spit paintings and commissions? I'm guessing you're referring to watercolors, which is a medium I use sometimes on some of my arts. But no, that's not actually exclusive to commissions and speed paint. I just happened to use it more often in those situations than I do normally. I actually do a lot of personal art that doesn't get posted on DeviantArt in watercolors because they're so much fun. It's a medium I really, really love using, and I'm still a bit of a noob at it. It's not like I'm an expert or anything, and so yeah, I use it less often than I do color pencils, simply because I know color pencils better, and I'm a little bit quicker with them than I am with watercolors. So they require more time for me, and lately time is something I've been lacking of. So I haven't used them very often lately. But I actually also did a small comic all in watercolors a while back. It was an Azarian Stories comic that was called All That Glitters. It can be read on DeviantArt. And that was 10 pages long, a 10-page long comic, and it was by far the most time-consuming project I've ever done. It took me 1.5 years of just preparation, and and to get the actual pages done, I had to work an insane amount of time. It was really time-consuming, but absolutely beautiful at the same time. It was really, really enjoyable to work on the pages each time, and to mix colors, to actually have a chance to do something different than color pencils. It was very nice, and I will actually love to use it for an actual comic, like an entire comic made up of watercolors. It will be the most time-consuming thing in the world, but it will be amazing. I will be up to trying it someday. Alright, now we get to a combo of 3 questions that were asked by 3 different people, which are pretty much in the same domain, so I think I'm gonna answer them all together. So these questions were asked by Just a Cat, Aspigaloo, and Scarlet Pie. They all 3 asked, where do you get your ideas for stories, and how do you design your characters? Aspie asked, what inspired you to create your 3 projects? And Scarlet asks, what's the inspiration for Azarian Stories? So yes, pretty much similar questions, and the answer is very complicated, because my inspiration is kind of random, I guess. I don't really have a fixed place that I go to get inspired. All three ideas came from different sources, and Chakra, for example, was inspired by the game Okami from Capcom and Clover Studio. It was, such a beautiful game with such a beautiful style. It was really, it's just inspiring in general, and it was like the spark that lit up the flame for me, because it was, the bout of inspiration I needed to create the story I've always wanted to tell. Chakra, sorry, I always get those mixed up. Chakra started as a fun comic for Okami. It originally had to be like a continuation of the story, I think, with the characters from the video game. So it was nothing like the thing today. But with time, it evolved into its own thing, basically, and it gained an individuality. It was no longer tied to Okami as much. I still kept like some references to the game because I loved it so much, and I felt it would be like a nice tribute to keep, for example, silhouettes and shadows from like Shiranui and Orochi the snake. So yeah, it doesn't contain the characters themselves, and it doesn't really reference the story as much, but just as a thank you for the amazing inspiration it gave me, I just kept those within the story, but the story itself is completely different from Okami. Alright, now we're moving into coloring. Alright, that was quick. Actually, my line arts tend to be pretty quick. It's the coloring that really takes a lot of time. So I'm just gonna keep telling my story as I start coloring. So as for Africa, as we talk about it, Africa is the second of my projects, and it started mid-2010s. So it started as an inspiration. The inspiration that got me to write it was basically just documentaries about African wildlife. I was always fascinated by them, and just to have something talk about the less known animals, like the leopard. The most popular African animal is probably the lion, I guess the elephant. So it's just very well known creatures. But about leopards, there's not much, there's not much literature, there's not much to talk about. Yeah, there are a few documentaries, but really life of leopards are very secretive animals, and I guess that's what really sparked my interest for them. It's lesser known cats that don't get as much love as they deserve, in my opinion. And aside from that, the classics like The Lion King obviously inspired Africa, but more about that, it was like the need for a real story, like something that was more character driven than Chakra, which is more action driven, because it's more like a superhero fantasy story. I wanted like something closer to the ground, something more real in terms of story and just character development. Oops, that happens a lot. So yeah, I sort of went for a documentary-like story, just about how harsh life can be for animals. And in that case, I also threw in some references to parenting, to relationships between brothers and sisters, between different like people in the same community. So we have the predator and prey, and maybe different kinds of personality these can be related to. So it's a variety of things that I felt the need to express, because I felt like I hadn't expressed myself enough on these points with Chakra, and so I just created Africa. And Africa took 1 year developing, basically. It was quite a long time. Instead, regarding Zarian stories, my latest and most convoluted story, the inspiration came from space, mainly. I have it right here. Planet of the Apes, which is a really awesome movie from I think the 70s, if I remember correctly. I honestly don't remember when it was published, but it's a really nice movie, and that the one you just saw was like the Italian version of the DVD, which features the very last scene in right on the front cover. It's like, could you not? Like, spoilers, please? But yeah, that was my main inspiration for Azarian Stories. Azarian Stories is an alternate reality-like story. So it's like between the sheer fantasy of Chakra and the sheer realism of Africa, Azarian Stories sits somewhere in between, you know. It's an alternate reality, so it's got some fantasy in it, but it's a reality, so it's something that could actually work in real life. That's what it was going for. So yeah, it's based on the what if hypothesis, something like the butterfly effect, for example. It's got to be more like of a hypothesis type story. And Azarian Stories, you know, tells the tale of many different characters, how each of them faces this new reality that happened to them. And yeah, if Africa took 1 year of creating, Azarian Stories was like first conceived in 2004, if I remember correctly, and it's still in the making. So you do the math and you tell me if I'm crazy or not. I think I am. So KCD Dragons asks, how long did it take you to write the plots of your comics? Have you ever completely rewritten anything so many times that it ended up as something completely different than what you started with? Yeah, I mean, I was sort of starting to say it in the previous question, but you know, the plot to Chakra took around a few months to write, basically. I got the inspiration and immediately started writing it down, and that was it. I mean, as I said, the plot was very simple. The character development was very simple. Chakra is a very, you know, childish, let me say again, comic. So it came up quite quickly, and it stayed mostly unchanged throughout the entire development, which is not very good. For Africa, as I said, it took 1 year, and for Azarian Stories, it took forever, and it's still taking forever. As for like completely rewriting something that it turned out to be something very different, that happened mostly with Africa. Africa in the beginning, like in the 1 year that I developed it, it was a completely different story. I guess it was more something you would see now in Zootopia. So with this community of animals that lived in a sort of semi-harmony, like regulated by the laws of nature and stuff like that, with this more important animal, which very unoriginally was a lion. And I'm not gonna say it was a Lion King, but boy was it very similar. So this more important character sort of regulating everything that happened. And guess what? This character died in the story, and I don't remember what happened next, because some of it actually ended up into the story of Africa, not the lion dying, because that got scrapped really quickly, because it sounded like something that already happened and was probably a lot more popular and more well known than Africa. But I don't know, that was just my feeling, I guess. But yeah, it was very different than it was today, and it was, I guess, much less realistic than I wanted, because I was still hardwired into into Chakra at the time. I did it again, damn it. So I was still in like full fantasy mode. I removed the whole rules and kings and queens and stuff like that from the final product of Africa. You will not see anything of the like in the story, but I did keep some of the elements from the very first draft. As for Azarian stories, as I said, it's still in the works, but I guess it's the project that changed the most, because at first it was just this really plain and simple world where like humans were oppressed and Zaras were this new dominant species that did whatever they want, basically. That was all the story, I swear. So it went a long way from there. I started building a society, a law, sort of almost like a new physics system, like a whole new, for example, genealogy, whole new animals that populate the world. It's an alternate reality. So like some animals never went extinct and gave rise to a new species and stuff like that. I'm a huge genetic and biology freak, by the way, in case it wasn't clear enough. I love researching this kind of stuff, so I ended up putting it into the comic. For example, not all human races may be extinct, like aside from Homo sapiens, which is the one that still is here today. Why am I talking about this? This is spoilery. Don't listen, cover your ears, listen to some music or something. But yeah, aside from that, yeah, it changed a lot from what it was originally, and I guess that's beneficial. That's a sign that like your ideas are developing. The very first ideas that you get rarely just remain unchanged and make it into the final cut. Usually, like the beginning idea is not bad. It's something worth keeping, but it needs to be changed to match, I don't know, the style you're going for, or just story in general. Maybe what you thought the first time doesn't fit with the rest of your world, so it needs revising. But it's good that some ideas still remain somewhat unchanged, just as a backbone, some sort of like a base idea that you can develop and grow into something larger. Blah Blah Toucan asks, why do you do shading purple in some of those speed drops? Does this only work with some lighting situations? Well, what do you know? I'm shading purple right now. Isn't that a coincidence? Yeah, actually it is. But I mean, yeah, I guess yes, it does actually work in some situations better than others. By the way, this is the base shading of the drawing. I'm gonna go over it with the character's actual colors right now. But yeah, the purple shading works better in some situations over others. Like in this case, I chose it for this entire scene under this overcast sky, basically, because it works very well with the grayish green that I chose for the base, the one that I put down at the very beginning. It basically creates a nice contrast without being obnoxious or too cold, for example, like a blue, because that was my next option. I thought it would be a nice touch to give the characters and the environment some color without it being too aggressive. And also, purple as a symbolism is a color that communicates importance. And since, you know, this scene was very crucial in the story because it was the moment in which Africa got cast away from her territory, I thought that, you know, giving it a hue of purple would you know, improve this color symbolism. So to give the scene importance, to give it majesty and like gravity of what was going on. But yeah, this is it all comes down to color theory and symbolism. For example, red is a color that communicates urgency or danger or anger too. So it was used more in the scene with Pa and the cubs, for example, being chased by Chewie. So it was more of a danger sort of situation. And so yeah, right now I'm settling for the purple in this very last scene. By the way, yeah, this is one of the last scenes of chapter 2 before it ends. And so yeah, does it only work with some lighting situations? Yes, it does. You can use it in general for your illustrations. I usually also use it, like for example in this case, because the pelts of both Africa and the cubs are this tawny yellowish color. So yellow and purple are complementaries, so it means that they are opposite on the color wheel. And complementary colors, when used together, have two effects. When they're associated like back to back closely, they empower each other, so they make each other look stronger. When they are laid one over another, they have this effect of tuning usually it's the clearer of the two down in a natural way. It's sort of like creating a gray that looks natural. And once again, for the scene that I was looking for, like this rainy, overcast, damp scene, it was a nice way to tune the colors down without using gray. Unita N asks, what about distribution of your time management and other stuff like that? Okay, this is an interesting question. Time management. Many people actually ask me about, like, do I keep a schedule? How do I manage to always post a page every week? In some cases, like twice a week. So yeah, I do have a schedule. Yeah, it would be impossible not to, with 2 comics. I do need time management. I do that by using a technique which is called the Pomodoro technique. Very Italian, I guess. The Pomodoro technique basically divides your working hours into sections that you will have to manage in different ways, and then gives you a little bit of time to rest, to take a break, and a longer time to take a break. The Pomodoro technique says you should first of all decide a task. So decide what you would like to achieve in the next session. If you have your idea in mind, it's much better to write it down if you're a beginner. It helps a lot later on, and you don't have to keep doing that once you get the hang of it. It's just for beginning. After you decide your task, work on it for 25 minutes. Set a timer, like on your phone for example, for 25 minutes and work on it. And don't take any distractions, don't take any breaks. Turn off your computer if you can. If you're working on your computer, turn off your internet. If you're working on the internet, I don't know, just don't visit sites that may distract you. Don't visit YouTube and stuff like that. If you're working on YouTube, then I don't know how to help you. No, I'm joking. Just don't take distractions. Propose it to yourself to just focus on your work without distractions. No Facebook, no stuff like that. So once you've done that, like once the timer rings, take a short break. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, I don't know, just a very short break. In this break, you're not supposed to be like doing anything related to your work. If you're working on the computer, get up and go for a short walk. Even around the house, it's okay. Just to get your body moving. You should not be sitting at your desk longer than 1 hour, by the way. And then after 5 minutes, come back to your desk and get back to work for another 25 minutes. Repeat that until you gather like 4 sessions of 25 minutes each. So take a pause, come back to work, take another pause, come back to work until you collect basically 2 hours worth of working. After that, you get a reward, a big pause of 15 to 30 minutes. I usually do 30 minutes. So take a longer break, get out there, go for an ice cream, go for, a walk in the park, visit a friend, do whatever you want for half an hour. You're free. You can go to the internet at that time. So like if you were, pausing before because you had to work, now it's the time to go to the internet and do whatever you want. Visit YouTube, visit Facebook. So after you do finish that, rinse and repeat. Just get back to work for 25 minutes, take a short pause of 5 minutes, and so on and so forth. It's fairly simple once you get the hang of it. And it really helps with your concentration, especially because you're promising yourself not to do anything else after you start working. That's very important. That's the basics. And also setting your goal for that session also helps, because by the end of it, you will have achieved so much in such a smaller time. If you are like me and you really like spending time on the internet, then this method will really help. It helped me a lot, and I really do hope it helps you too. So that's about it for time management. About the schedule, like usually how I manage my weekly things, I try to work together with the Pomodoro technique, and I set my goals for the week on a board that I have in my room, and that really helps with keeping track of everything I have to do. If I tend to forget things, which I do, it really helps with concentration and just reminding me of what I have to do next. And for example, I always set my pages 1 week in advance, so I know that I have to complete them by the end of the week, which for the most part I actually do. I've never jumped a page ever so far for like a year or so. So this really helps to keep a schedule. You can decide a day in which you're going to upload, for example, your big project, your page, your YouTube video, anything you want really. And for as long as you work, try to focus on that as your main goal for the week. Set a big goal, and all the other ones will just come into place as soon as you complete the bigger one. It really drives you. Once you complete a goal for the week, like for example when I post a page, I usually give myself a reward, and you can do that too, obviously. Give yourself a reward, because your brain loves to be rewarded for work it does. You've strained it so much throughout the week. Once you do get your goal done, then reward your brain. You can go for pizza in the evening, or I don't know, see your best friend, do whatever you want, have a track to the lake, whatever you want. You can do anything that you like the most. Try to save that reward, that specific reward, just for the completion of your goal. Don't avoid doing that activity all the time. I don't know, choose something original, you know what I mean. Something that you will only be doing once you complete your goal. That will keep your brain so rewarded. You have no idea. You have no idea. It helps a lot. It really does. So yeah, that's basically my process going about every week, basically, of work. It's very tiring. It is. It's tiring, and it really strains you. But once you get that done, and once you get that reward going, it really is all that matters. It makes it all so worth it. And in my case, I also have you guys rewarding me every time with your beautiful comments and your dedication to my projects. That really drives me a lot more than any reward that I would ever get. That's the best thing in the world. So thank you guys so much, like a million times. Lucy Oro asks, who is your favorite Chakra Hero? My favorite Chakra Hero is Kuma, Because he's a giant ball of fur. What else is not to love about him? But yeah, seriously, I love Kuma and I'm so sad about all the crap I've been giving him in the latest page. I'm sorry, I know you guys hate me for that. There's people who are legit upset that I'm doing that, and I don't blame them. I know, you know how you guys feel, and I'm so sorry about it. Drifting Streams asked, hi Arvin, I'm a huge fan of your artwork and most of all your comics. I've been rereading a few pages of Africa and I've been wondering about how you create your panels. Do you set the panels up digitally or once the sketch is done? Actually, you probably had a chance to see this with this page. But no, I actually set the panels up traditionally. This is all done traditionally. As you can see, it gets kind of dirty after a while. But yeah, it's all traditionally done, and it's probably not the most efficient way of doing things, but I have no way of printing like my results, even if I did panels digitally and then printed them to draw in traditionally. So when I design my panels, I always pay attention to the flow of each page. I probably explained this in a previous video, but in order to set up my paneling, I make a short storyboard, meaning a thumbnail sized page, like a smaller version of the finished product. And in that version, I analyze, I study what best positioning of panels could help with the story. That's what I'm most concerned about, how the paneling helps with the flow of the story and how, for example, it affects the reading, like the pace, even the general tying in with the previous page and the next. So there's really a lot to put into account, and when you're working on an entire comic, you may want to do that in advance instead of having to improvise it on each page, because it saves a lot of time in the long run, and it's really helpful for when your time is in a pinch and you won't be able to work on it. It's really helpful to have it done beforehand and find it already done when you crucially need it. Manga Artist 16 asks, I was wondering if you had any tips for writing villains. Yeah, that's actually a pretty tough question, because villains are probably the hardest characters to write, even harder than the protagonists themselves, the good guys, because villains need to have the famous motive. They need to have an aim, maybe an even more important aim than the protagonist itself, because usually all the characters are driven by a motive. Okay, they all have to have like a desire, if you want, something they want to achieve or obtain, and their story always revolves around how they are unable to obtain it until they do something very specific. To write villains, first of all, I will write their backstory. Usually, what drove them to become villains is in their backstories, and it doesn't have to necessarily be their parents died or they were mistreated. In order to make it let's say more original, you may want to read lots and lots of different books. For example, I don't like making the world black and white. I don't like to make the villains and the heroes just for the sake of it. Yeah, I did that with Chakra, but as of late I really dislike this sort of black and white division, because the world is almost never black and white like this. Many people have reasons to behave well and reasons to behave badly. There's no really neat distinction between them. So for villains, what is the reason that makes them behave the way they do? And if they're doing something that's not considered noble, or like it's not considered right, what pushes them to do that? It doesn't necessarily have to be because they were mistreated. It can be something that they believe is right, but actually isn't. Once again, take inspiration from the villains that were written. There are some excellent villains to take inspiration from. For example, one of my favorite villains of all time is Syndrome from The Incredibles, the Pixar movie. Because, I mean, the reason that drives him becoming a villain is very original. It's really something logical, even. Something that you would expect. You would say, hey, it makes sense. You know, that's what I thought the first time I saw the movie. It made sense that he would become a villain because of something that happened in his life. So yeah, that was very original. Try to think out of the schemes. Try to avoid cliche, villains that just act as villains because the plot requires you to. Once again, if you can, avoid the distinction, black and white, good people and bad people, because that's not what happens in real life. Like, most people have some degree of gray in them. Some are good but do some questionable things because they have to, and some usually do more questionable things than others, but are not necessarily bad. So yeah, it's interesting to keep a distinction this way instead of making it black and white. And once again, take a lot of inspiration. Use references. I will never stop saying this. If you're still working on it, if you're like experimenting with it, just for the moment, try to just write down what your mind tells you to, even if it's something that you already seen somewhere. After completing it, or after like working on it for a long time, the idea will evolve. Trust me on that. It just, of course, put your effort into it. Don't just wait for it to evolve. But if you work on it long enough, it will evolve into something completely original. All you have to do is be patient and research a lot. Research as much as you can. Gender Ninja asks, I've always enjoyed all your stories, but when I try to write mine, I get stuck. Larger plots and story building have always been a weakness of mine. No matter how many rewrites, I end up frustrated with the end product. What I really love doing is character design and making the backstory to them. Okay, so this is a premise that this lovely person sent to me, and they asked about advice for stories. Basically, my most immediate advice will obviously be just research. I know it sounds redundant, it sounds repetitive. I'm so sorry about that, but it really helps a lot to research. Try and do something you never would have done. Read a book, or watch a movie that you never would have read or watched. It's really interesting, and it really opens new possibilities for your creativity. It's something that you might not have thought about, and other people did. So for the story and the plots, you say that you design your characters first, and then try to give them a story. Well, if that doesn't help, try to do the opposite. Create the story first, and then design the characters. See if that can help. Try to see from a different perspective. Don't get stuck on a method that you are using and just use that one. That will kill your creativity with time. Yeah, it will work the first time, but the second you will already feel less inspired and less creative than usual, because your brain needs to be constantly stimulated, and that goes for everyone, of course. I've had the chance to study this sort of things, and I've learned that brains are continuously bombarded with stimuli, and it's only the newer and more unexpected stimuli that cause the strongest responses. So if we continuously use the same method and give the brain the same stimuli, it will just get keep getting dull. It's like the brain will get used to it and will consider it like buzz noise, something that, you know, happens so often and so repetitively that it's just not worth considering anymore. So what really keeps your brain active and continuously creative is to use continuously new stimuli. So, you know, try to do that and see if that helps. For example, for new stories, I don't know, try to write a subject that you never did write. You don't have to create a story about that specific subject if you don't want to, of course. But like, just for a test, try to pick a theme that you would never pick before, and try to see, you know, what kind of story you will create with that. You can, you know, make a test and see if it spawns new ideas. If it does, you may use those ideas to create the story that you were working on and that you had got stuck to. You know what I mean? I'm sorry if it sounds very confusing, and I really do hope this helps, because it happened to me as well. And I'm still in the curse of dealing with it. Like, the ideas for Azarian stories don't flow as well as I wish they did, and the story is kind of an old because I sort of I'm running out of ideas for it, and that's why I'm experiencing so many different things. And so far, I mean, it's helping. It really gave me many different you know, new ideas that I haven't never thought of. So it's doing its job. It's very slow. It's very, very slow. Don't give up on the first try. If you don't have any ideas, don't blame yourself. It really is okay, because it's a slow process to get used to. Regarding the plots and story buildings that you were talking about, you can try dividing them in different like sections. For example, I like to work on the main plot and on various subplots that can enrich the story and make it more interesting. The plot itself can be divided into sections. There's a beginning, an inciting incident that starts the story, like it's the sort of like the accident that sets the plot going. After the inciting incident, you may want to divide your story into acts, sort of like various structures like within the same main thing. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, it's basically a 3-act structure. That's what it's called. It's the most commonly used type of structure to write the plot. So after the inciting incident, you may have like the development of the first act, like the you know, the action that takes place in the first act of your story, which usually leads to a small climax at the very end of your first act, which is like what the character achieves in the first you know, part of the story. It's something that is usually considered a win for the character, so something positive, something beneficial to them. And this continues and drives the action into Act 2, which is a new obstacle for the character. So after they achieve something smaller, they get a new like challenge, something that they have to overcome for the second part of the story. And this new challenge is, let's say, fought or at least faced during the second act, which usually resolves into a second climax for the second act, which is also called the midpoint, because it's the exact you know, midpoint of the story. So it's the story coming exactly halfway through. The midpoint is usually you know, a big twist in the story, something that really captures the attention of the reader and forces them to keep reading, you know, keep going forward. The midpoint leads way to the third act, which is usually the act of what is it called? The despair, let's say, because the midpoint can be something like catastrophic or something negative usually. So Act 3 opens as the lowest possible point for your characters to be in. So the moment of most pain, the moment of most despair, it's a very touching moment. But it's also the moment in which your character realizes what has to be done. And from there, it can only go up, you know what I mean? So that's how the third act develops. It's the character gaining power back, basically, and coming back to finish what they had started at the very beginning of the story. So everything ties up with the third and final act. Of course there's gonna be obstacles also in this case, but the final climax is like the very, very end of the story. So what the character achieves in order to basically achieve the goal that they had set from the very beginning of the story. And after that climax, there's the final resolution of the comic or the story in general. So that's the very end of it. And sometimes the resolution opens the way to the next story. So if you're like tying various stories together, or if you are like thinking of making a series, that's how you can tie them together from the resolution of the previous book, or by throwing hints within the book itself to the next story. And this structure is actually very popular, and you can actually just use this very structure to create the entire series. Like, don't think as like the book as a single unit. Think of it as a part of the series that you're writing. So it can't be like just a little bit of your series, of your major series. Just try and experiment with it. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Just remember, write all your ideas down. Never think of an idea as something stupid or okay, I'm never gonna do this, let's just forget about it. Write everything down, even the stupidest and most dumb sounding ideas, because who knows, they may be helpful in the future. They may be they may be like the basis of your next idea, the one that actually makes the cut. You will never know. So yeah, never throw ideas away, never. Write all of them, and if you can, carry a sketchbook around at all times. Like by default, I have one in my bag, and yeah, it really helps when you're in a pinch and you get that inspiration going. And don't try to force your inspiration to come out, because that's not how it works. If you have an idea for a story already, all the power to you. Just go do it. If you don't, wait it out. It doesn't have to be immediate. As I said, try to structure it according to for example, this method, and see where it goes. See if you like it that way. If you don't, you can just scrap it and restart it. It's no big deal. You don't get too hardwired around your ideas. Don't be too angry with yourself, for example. Try to be flexible with what you do, because that's really what helps you in this kind of situation. That's what gets your ideas flowing. Not being rigid about them, but letting them change, evolve with time. So yeah, that's it. So yeah, as you can probably notice, this page, while I talked, kind of finished itself. I mean, at least I wish it would. Like, for example, when I'm not home, how cool would it be if pages just finish themselves? Sadly, they don't. I actually work on them. So yeah, this page finished itself, and I'm just adding the final touches, and I guess I will show you guys the finished product now that we're so close to seeing it. And after that, we're gonna wrap this video up and call it a day. And maybe go for a pizza, because now I think I completed my my goal, and my brain demands a reward. that's how it is. So yeah, let me just grab my final pencil, which is this one, and let me add a little bit of fog behind Africa and for adorable Kamosi, and we're done. So in the meantime, I would like to thank you guys so much for sticking around for this video. I'm really sorry if you were bored. Let me know if you were. I think that if we could settle, like for example, on an argument, the video will be very interesting. I'm not sure how interesting this was. And once again, this is just an experiment. So let me know. If you like this format, if you're enjoying it, I will do more of it. If you're not, I'll just scrap it and move on, because that's how ideas flow. You need to test them out in order to, to see if they work or not. So yeah, I will be done for today, and you will be able to see this page on the Untitled Chapter, Twitter, and a bunch of different websites. If you guys enjoy my work, you may want to consider donating on Patreon. That really helps, and it really shows that you guys support me, and it makes me so happy. Like, I'm beyond words, beyond grateful for the support that I received. So that's everything I have to say. I will meet you on the Untitled as soon as this page is uploaded, and until next time, you have a good one. Bye!